Almost gone. I'm learning my lines for the Monday, and you just keep going like that.
The dinner table is set for 8, but only one chair is occupied. Tom Selleck sits at the far end beneath the warm light of a hanging lamp. In front of him is a plate he has barely touched. The room is quiet enough to hear the old clock on the wall counting each second. On television, a younger version of him races across Hawaii in a red Ferrari. The man on the screen is 35, fearless and impossible to ignore, thick mustache, Detroit Tigers cap.
Look, Lieutenant Cook's coming in from Tokyo on a Max flight. I gotta pick him up. But I go through
Hawaiian shirt, and the kind of smile that made millions of viewers believe everything would somehow work out. The older man watches silently. Then, the picture changes. Now he is Frank Reagan, seated at another dinner table, surrounded by the fictional family he led for 14 seasons on Blue Bloods. Sons, daughters, grandchildren, arguments, prayers, laughter. The television family gathered around him.
During shooting.
When I'm working in the show, I work about 80 hours a week.
As if Sunday dinner could continue forever. But this evening, in this imagined moment, the soundstage is gone. The cameras have stopped, and Tom Selleck is left with the question every aging star eventually faces. What happens when the world still loves the character, but the industry decides the story is finished? For more than 50 years, Selleck represented something Hollywood rarely knows how to preserve: quiet strength. He did not need to shout to dominate a scene. He did not chase controversy to remain visible. He became famous playing men who kept their promises, protected their families, and carried disappointment without allowing it to turn them bitter. But behind that image was a career repeatedly shaped by rejection, sacrifice, lost opportunities, and decisions that could easily have destroyed everything. He missed the chance to become Indiana Jones. He struggled for more than a decade.
I grew up in Los Angeles, and I was studying business in college and never done a school play.
Before becoming a star. He watched Hollywood move away from the kind of leading man he represented. And after helping build one of television's most dependable dramas, he was forced to say goodbye to Blue Bloods while openly believing the show still had life left in it. Tom Selleck's story is not the tragedy of a man who failed. It is more complicated than that. It is the story of a man who succeeded beyond imagination, yet spent much of his life learning that even success cannot protect you from being replaced, misunderstood, or told that your time has passed. Long before the mustache became famous, Thomas William Selleck was simply a boy trying to understand what kind of man he wanted to become. He was born in Detroit, Michigan in January 1945. His family later moved to California, where he grew up in Sherman Oaks. His father worked in business, and the Selleck household valued discipline, responsibility, and hard work. Fame was not part of the family plan. Basketball was.
Tom Selleck is one of the most popular male stars on television today.
Tom grew tall, athletic, and competitive. He attended Los Angeles Valley College before transferring to the University of Southern California on a basketball scholarship. He studied business administration, not theater. Acting was not his childhood dream, and Hollywood did not yet appear to be his destiny. Then, someone noticed him. A teacher reportedly encouraged him to explore acting, and Selleck began appearing in commercials and small television opportunities. His looks opened the first door, but appearance alone could not carry him through what came next. In the late 1960s, he appeared on The Dating Game. To viewers today, the footage may look like the obvious beginning of a future star. He was handsome, confident, and camera-friendly. But Selleck did not win. That small defeat was almost symbolic. Hollywood could see him, but it was not yet choosing him.
I live here too, so why am I breaking in? Well, I made a deal with...
Around the same period, his life moved in a far more serious direction. Selleck served in the California Army National Guard during the Vietnam War era, while other young performers were completely focused on auditions, publicity, and career momentum. He was balancing military responsibility with an uncertain future in entertainment. When he returned to acting, there was no red carpet waiting. There were commercials, guest appearances, supporting parts, pilots that went nowhere, jobs that seemed promising until the phone stopped ringing. For years, Tom Selleck lived inside one of Hollywood's most dangerous conditions. He was successful enough to keep trying, but not successful enough to feel secure. Imagine a fictional evening in Los Angeles sometime in the mid-1970s. Selleck returns to a small apartment after another audition. He loosens his tie, places the script on a table, and notices a message waiting for him. He calls his agent, hoping this will finally be the one. The conversation is brief. "They liked you, Tom. They just went in another direction." He hangs up. No dramatic music. No breakdown. Just another role given to another man. That exact scene is imagined, but the emotional truth behind it was real. Selleck spent years being almost right for projects. He had the height, the voice, and the presence, but television executives did not seem to know what to do with him. He appeared in westerns, crime shows, commercials, and low-budget films. He played cowboys, policemen, soldiers, and charming strangers. He was often noticeable, but rarely essential. And in Hollywood, being noticed is not the same as being remembered. By the time Selleck entered his 30s, the pressure was becoming impossible to ignore. Younger actors were arriving. Established stars controlled the best
Sometimes it doesn't. Overnight, Higgins had installed an alarm.
roles. Every unsuccessful pilot made the next opportunity feel less likely. Many actors would have quit. Others might have reinvented themselves so aggressively that nothing authentic remained. Selleck kept working. That persistence eventually brought him to a room containing two of the most powerful filmmakers in Hollywood, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas. They were preparing an adventure film about an archaeologist named Indiana Jones. Selleck auditioned for the role, and the filmmakers wanted him. Decades later, Spielberg publicly confirmed that Selleck had been given the part before an existing television obligation prevented the casting from moving forward. Think about the size of that moment. Indiana Jones was not yet a global icon. There was no famous hat, no legendary theme music, and no franchise stretching across generations. It was simply a promising movie from talented filmmakers. But Selleck understood the opportunity. He could sense that this was different. After years of being the man who nearly got the job, he had finally been chosen. Then, CBS refused to release him from his commitment to a television pilot called Magnum P.I. Selleck did not lose Indiana Jones because his audition failed. He lost it because another studio already owned his time. Harrison Ford stepped into the role, Raiders of the Lost Ark became a classic, and cinema history changed forever. For most actors, that would be the wound people discussed for the rest of their lives. The role you should have played. The fortune you might have earned. The franchise that could have carried your name. But what makes Selleck's story extraordinary is that the project blocking him from becoming Indiana Jones was about to transform him into something equally important. Magnum P.I. Premiered in 1980. At first glance, Thomas Magnum appeared to be a fantasy built for television, a private investigator
Like I said, funny the things a grown man will do for a living.
living on a beautiful Hawaiian estate, driving a Ferrari he did not own, and taking cases while surrounded by beaches, danger, and attractive people. But Selleck understood that charm alone would not sustain the show. He fought to make Magnum human. The character had served in Vietnam. He carried memories beneath the humor. He could be confident without being invulnerable, masculine without becoming emotionally empty. He made mistakes. He relied on friends. He laughed loudly, loved deeply, and sometimes looked haunted when nobody else was watching. That balance changed Selleck's life. Almost overnight, the actor who had spent years waiting for recognition became one of television's most famous men. The mustache became iconic. The Hawaiian shirts became fashionable. The Detroit Tigers cap became part of the character's identity. Millions of viewers tuned in not simply because Magnum solved mysteries, but because Selleck
You know a social security number?
No.
made him feel like someone audiences could trust. In 1984, Selleck won an Emmy for the role. The victory looked sudden from the outside. It was not. Behind it were years of rejection, military service, failed pilots, forgettable parts and evenings when quitting would have been completely understandable. That is the first great lesson inside his story. Breakthroughs often appear overnight only because the public did not witness the decade that came before them. But success brought a new danger. Once Hollywood discovers a profitable version of you, it often refuses to imagine another one. Selleck was now the handsome television hero. The charming detective. The man with the mustache. The very image that made him famous could also imprison him. He began taking film roles that allowed him to reach beyond Magnum. In 1987, he starred alongside Ted Danson and Steve Guttenberg in 3 Men and a Baby. The movie became a major commercial success and proved that Selleck could thrive on the big screen without playing a private investigator. He followed it with westerns, comedies, dramas, and action films. Some worked, others disappeared quickly. And then Magnum, P.I., ended in 1988. For 8 years, Selleck had been one of television's defining stars. Now he faced a terrifying transition. Audiences loved Thomas Magnum. Would they follow Tom Selleck? This is where many television careers collapse. A long-running series creates familiarity, but familiarity can become typecasting. Viewers may believe they know an actor so completely that every new character feels like an imitation of the old one. Selleck continued working, but the 1990s did not produce another phenomenon equal to Magnum. His movies were uneven at the box office. Hollywood was changing. Action heroes became louder, younger, and more physically extreme. The industry's ideal leading man shifted toward a different kind of intensity. Selleck's strength had always come from restraint. Restraint was becoming harder to sell. Then, he made one of the smartest decisions of his career. Instead of desperately trying to prove he was still the same romantic hero from the 1980s, he allowed audiences to see him differently. He joined Friends as Dr. Richard Burke, the older ophthalmologist who falls in love with Monica Geller. The role could have become uncomfortable or ridiculous. The age difference was central to the story, and Selleck was entering a sitcom with one of the most popular young casts on television. Yet he made Richard warm, dignified, and believable. He was not a desperate older man trying to recapture youth. He was mature, calm, and emotionally available, the exact qualities that separated him from the chaos surrounding the show's younger characters. A new generation discovered Tom Selleck. Some viewers who had never seen Magnum, P.I., now knew him as the man Monica might have married. That reinvention mattered. It demonstrated that aging did not have to be hidden. Selleck could use it. The years had added gravity to his voice and authority to his stillness. He no longer needed to play the man running toward adulthood. He could play the man who had survived it. Outside Hollywood, his private life was becoming increasingly important. Selleck married actress Jillie Mack in 1987, and they raised their daughter away from much of the chaos associated with celebrity culture. He repeatedly emphasized the value of family, privacy, and life on his California ranch. The ranch became more than property. It represented distance from the industry. On a film set, dozens of people adjust the lighting before a star walks into the room. On a ranch, the land does not care who you are. Work must still be done. Weather does not negotiate. Trees do not applaud. For a man whose public image was built around grounded masculinity, the ranch seemed like the place where the image and the individual could meet. But even that refuge eventually became connected to controversy. During California's severe drought, a municipal water district accused Selleck of improperly obtaining public water for use at his ranch. The dispute was settled in 2015, with costs paid to the district and no admission of wrongdoing publicly established through a trial. For another celebrity, the story might have passed as an ordinary scandal. For Selleck, it struck directly at his reputation. This was a man whose career depended on trust. He played characters who followed codes, defended institutions, and expected accountability. Headlines suggesting that he had used community water for private property created a painful contradiction between the public image and the allegation. The controversy did not end his career, but it revealed a truth every celebrity eventually learns: a reputation can take decades to build and only one headline to place under suspicion. By then, however, Selleck had already found the role that would define the second half of his career. In 2010, Blue Bloods premiered on CBS. Selleck played Frank Reagan, the New York City police commissioner and head of a multi-generational law enforcement family. Frank was not Thomas Magnum with gray hair. He was controlled, traditional, and often burdened by decisions that offered no perfect outcome. The show's emotional center was not a gunfight or an arrest. It was the Reagan family dinner. Every episode seemed to return to that table, where police cases became moral questions and professional disagreements became family arguments. Characters prayed together before eating. They challenged one another. They defended one another. And at the head of the table sat Frank Reagan. Selleck barely needed to move. A pause could communicate disappointment. A raised eyebrow could stop an argument. A quiet sentence could carry more authority than another actor's speech. After decades in the industry, he had mastered the power of doing less. Blue Bloods became one of television's most dependable dramas. It was not built around shocking reinventions or elaborate mythology. Its strength came from repetition with purpose, family, duty, consequence, forgiveness, and the difficult space between law and justice. Critics sometimes dismissed that consistency as old-fashioned. Audiences kept watching. For 14 seasons, Selleck anchored the series. Then CBS announced that Blue Bloods would end. The final episodes aired in 2024, closing a run that had lasted nearly a decade and a half. Selleck made it clear that he did not believe the show needed to finish. He argued that the series remained successful and suggested the network had undervalued its continued audience. That frustration revealed something deeper than disappointment over losing a job. Selleck had spent his life proving the value of reliability. Hollywood had rewarded him for it twice, first with Magnum, P.I., then with Blue Bloods. But modern television increasingly measures value through ownership strategies, streaming goals, production costs, and the pursuit of new audiences. A show can remain beloved and still be canceled. A cast can remain committed and still be dismissed. After years of playing the man who made difficult decisions for others, Selleck was forced to accept a decision he could not control. Picture another fictional moment. The final Blue Bloods family dinner has been filmed. The director calls cut, but nobody immediately stands. The cast remains around the table. Plates, glasses, and serving dishes are still positioned exactly as they have been for countless scenes. Selleck looks from one actor to another. For 14 years, they have pretended to be a family so consistently that some part of the pretending has become real. Someone begins to speak, but emotion interrupts the words. Selleck places a hand on the table. Perhaps he says nothing. Sometimes the most painful endings arrive without a speech. The details of that scene are imagined, but the farewell was genuine. The cast had spent years creating one of television's most recognizable families, and the final episode forced them to leave the table audiences had come to regard as permanent. When Blue Bloods ended, Selleck was nearly 80. Many assumed retirement would follow. He rejected that assumption. He expressed interest in continuing to act and suggested that he remained open to the right work. In May 2026, during an appearance connected to the Detroit Tigers, he joked that he was looking for work and hinted that possible projects were being developed, though he did not identify them publicly. That comment may have sounded playful, but it carried emotional weight. Tom Selleck, the man who had led 2 legendary television series, was once again waiting for the next role. The situation mirrored his early career in an unexpected way. In his 20s and 30s, he waited because Hollywood had not yet decided what he could become. In his 80s, he faced the opposite problem. Hollywood knew exactly who he had been. The question was whether it could imagine who he might still become. A Blue Bloods continuation called Boston Blue carried the franchise forward with Donnie Wahlberg's Danny Reagan, while speculation continued over whether Selleck might one day appear as Frank Reagan. By mid-2026, discussion existed, but no confirmed return had transformed that hope into reality. Perhaps that uncertainty is the perfect place to examine his legacy. Tom Selleck has never been the loudest star of his generation. He did not build his identity around public breakdowns, shocking transformations, or endless reinvention. His career survived because viewers believed him. They believed him as a private investigator carrying invisible memories from war. They believed him as a father, unexpectedly caring for a baby. They believed him as the older man Monica loved. They believed him as Jesse Stone, the troubled police chief he portrayed across a series of television films. And they believed him as Frank Reagan, even when the character's decisions divided the family sitting around him. That trust was his greatest professional asset. It may also have been his heaviest burden. When an audience sees you as dependable, it becomes difficult to reveal uncertainty. When your characters appear strong, people may assume strength costs you nothing. When you age with dignity, the world may overlook how painful aging can be. Selleck has spoken about the physical demands of his long career and the value he places on life away from Hollywood. The young man who once ran across Hawaiian beaches eventually became an older actor carrying scenes through posture, voice, and expression. The body changes. The close-ups become less forgiving. The industry becomes less patient. But the desire to work does not automatically disappear because a birthday arrives. In 2024, Selleck released his memoir, You Never Know, reflecting on the accidental path that carried him from basketball and commercials to Magnum, missed opportunities, and a life he never could have planned. The title captured the philosophy beneath his entire career. You never know which rejection is protecting you. You never know which obligation will become your breakthrough. You never know whether the role you lose would have improved your life or merely changed it. Had Selleck become Indiana Jones, he might have achieved even greater film stardom. But Harrison Ford's career already shows us one version of that history. The more interesting mystery is what the world would have lost. Without Selleck, would Magnum, P.I. have become the same phenomenon? Would television have received Thomas Magnum's unusual mixture of humor, masculinity, trauma, and vulnerability? Would Selleck have later become Frank Reagan? Would he have built a career defined not by one enormous film franchise, but by decades of intimate connection with viewers inside their homes? He lost the whip and the fedora. He gained something different. Longevity, not effortless longevity, not uninterrupted dominance, but the kind built by surviving every stage of an industry designed to move on. Young heartthrob. Television superstar. Movie leading man. Former television superstar. Character actor. Romantic guest star. Western hero. Police chief. Family patriarch. And finally, an aging performer refusing to accept that the final episode of one show must also be the final episode of his career. The imagined dinner from the beginning is almost over now. On the television, young Thomas Magnum turns toward the camera and smiles. The older Selleck reaches for the remote, but he does not switch it off immediately. Perhaps he sees the ambition behind that smile. Perhaps he remembers the actor who had no idea whether the pilot would survive. Perhaps he remembers the role he lost and the career he gained. Then the screen shows Frank Reagan sitting silently at the head of the family table. Two characters. Two eras. Two lives built around the same man. Selleck finally turns off the television. The room becomes quiet again, but this time the silence does not feel like an ending. It feels like a pause between scenes. Because Tom Selleck's greatest achievement was never simply becoming famous. It was remaining recognizable without remaining unchanged. It was allowing age to deepen his presence instead of hiding it. It was proving that strength could be calm, masculinity could contain tenderness, and loyalty could be more compelling than spectacle. Hollywood may have taken Indiana Jones away from him. Time may have taken the speed, youth, and physical ease that once defined his image. CBS may have taken away the dinner table where Frank Reagan sat for 14 seasons. But none of those things could erase what Selleck built. A relationship with audiences that survived changing fashions, changing networks, and changing generations. And perhaps that is why his story feels emotional now. Not because his life was destroyed, not because he disappeared, but because millions of people watched him become older while they were becoming older too. They saw him transform from the man they wanted to be into the father they trusted, and finally into the grandfather whose presence made the family table feel complete. When viewers say they miss Tom Selleck, they may not be speaking only about an actor. They may be missing an era when television moved more slowly, when heroes did not need to be invincible, when families argued face to face and still gathered for dinner, when a man's word was treated as part of his identity. Tom Selleck became the symbol of that world. And now, as he searches for whatever comes next, the final question belongs to us. Does Hollywood still have room for men like him? Not younger copies, not digitally perfected versions, the real man, carrying every year on his face, every disappointment in his memory, and every lesson in the silence between his words. Tom Selleck once waited nearly 15 years for the role that changed his life. Perhaps he is waiting again. And after everything his career has taught us, counting him out would be a serious mistake. Because with Tom Selleck, you never know. The opportunity that appears to be gone may simply be preparing to return in another form. The final family dinner may not be the last time Frank Reagan speaks. The closing credits may not mean the performance is over. And the actor who lost one of cinema's greatest roles may still have one more unforgettable character waiting for him. What part of Tom Selleck's story surprised you most? The years of rejection, losing Indiana Jones, his transformation from Magnum to Frank Reagan, or his fight to continue working after Blue Bloods? Share your answer in the comments. And if you believe Hollywood should create more meaningful roles for legendary actors instead of quietly pushing them aside, subscribe and join us for the next story, because fame shows us the person standing beneath the spotlight. But time reveals what they were forced to carry when the lights went out.